In 1912, just moments before the Titanic left Southampton Harbour, a young passenger raised his camera and captured what he thought would be a simple memory of the journey ahead. The photograph showed the crowded deck, the calm sea, and the pride of modern engineering ready to cross the Atlantic. For over a century, that image remained hidden, forgotten in an old trunk. But when restoration experts finally brought it back to life using modern technology, something emerged from the shadows that no one could explain. A face staring directly at the camera from a place where no one should have been standing. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. And before we dive in, I want to mention that I'm developing another channel with even more intriguing stories. Check the description below for the link. Now let's uncover what this photograph truly revealed, and why it has historians, scientists, and investigators questioning everything they thought they knew about the Titanic's final voyage. Thomas Whitley was 23 years old when he boarded the RMS Titanic in Southampton on April 10, 1912. He was traveling third class, heading to New York to start a new life, working in his uncle's printing business. Thomas came from a modest family in Lancashire, England, where opportunities were scarce and dreams even scarcer. The Titanic represented hope, a bridge between the life he'd always known and the future he desperately wanted. Before boarding, Thomas had saved enough money to purchase a small Kodak Brownie camera. Photography was still a luxury for someone of his social standing, but he'd been fascinated by it since childhood. He wanted to document this momentous journey, to have proof that he'd sailed on the world's most magnificent ship. As passengers crowded onto the deck that crisp April morning, Thomas found a spot near the third-class promenade. The air smelled of coal smoke and salt water. Seagulls cried overhead, circling the massive funnels that towered above. He could hear conversations in a dozen different languages: Irish families seeking opportunity, Scandinavian immigrants chasing dreams, Eastern Europeans fleeing hardship. Thomas raised his camera and steadied himself against the railing. Through the viewfinder, he framed the scene carefully, the forward deck stretching toward the bow, clusters of passengers waving to loved ones on the dock, the ship's officers moving purposefully through the crowd. The morning sun created long shadows across the wooden planks. He pressed the shutter release. The photograph was taken at approximately 11:47 a.m., just 13 minutes before the Titanic began its departure. Thomas had no way of knowing it would be the only photograph he'd ever take aboard the ship. He had no way of knowing that 5 days later, he would be among the 1,517 souls who perished when the vessel struck an iceberg and sank into the freezing North Atlantic. Thomas's body was never recovered. His camera, however, was. In 1913, a fisherman working off the coast of Newfoundland pulled up a waterlogged leather bag in his nets. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was Thomas's Kodak Brownie. The fisherman, not understanding its significance, sold it to a local curiosity shop for $2. The shop owner kept it in storage for decades, eventually passing it down to his grandson, who discovered it while cleaning out the family's warehouse in 1998. The grandson, Michael Brennan, was a history enthusiast. When he found the camera and noticed faint markings indicating it might have come from the Titanic, he contacted the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The museum acquired the camera and carefully removed the film canister, but the technology of the late 1990s wasn't advanced enough to recover any images from the severely degraded film. The camera sat in the museum's archives for another 25 years. In 2023, Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in photographic restoration at MIT, heard about the camera during a conference on historical preservation. She'd been developing new techniques using artificial intelligence and advanced chemical analysis to recover images from damaged photographic materials. She requested permission to attempt restoration of the film. The museum agreed, and in January 2024, Dr. Chen's team began the painstaking process. They worked in a controlled environment, using spectroscopic imaging to analyze every molecule of the degraded film. The silver halide crystals that once captured light had corroded and fragmented, but traces remained. By mapping these traces and using machine learning algorithms trained on thousands of period photographs, they could theoretically reconstruct the original image. The process took 11 months. On December 3rd, 2024, Dr. Chen's computer screen flickered as the final rendering completed. She stared at the image for a full minute without speaking. Then she called her lead research assistant, Dr. Marcus Webb, into the room. "Tell me what you see," she said quietly, pointing at a specific area in the lower right quadrant of the photograph. Marcus leaned closer, adjusting his glasses. The photograph showed exactly what you'd expect. Passengers on deck, the ship's superstructure, morning shadows. But in the shadows, beneath a lifeboat davit, in a space that appeared to be a narrow gap between the deck and the boat housing, there was something that shouldn't exist. A face, not just any face. A face staring directly at the camera with an expression Marcus couldn't quite identify. Was it fear? Anticipation? Warning? That can't be right, Marcus said. No one could physically fit in that space. It's maybe 8 inches wide. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. I thought the same thing. I ran the restoration algorithm 7 more times, changing parameters, suspecting it was a rendering artifact. Same result every time. I even had the AI analyze the shadows and light angles. According to every physical model we have, if there's a face there, there's a person there. But there's no possible way a person could be there. She zoomed in on the face. The resolution was remarkable given the film's condition. The features were androgynous. It could have been male or female. The skin appeared pale, almost luminous against the dark background. The eyes were open wide, pupils fully dilated as if adjusted to complete darkness, and they were looking directly at Thomas Whitley's camera with an intensity that seemed to transcend the century between the moment of capture and now. There's something else, Dr. Chen said. She pulled up another window on her screen. I ran facial recognition against every passenger and crew member documented as being on the Titanic. Over 2,200 people, no matches. This person, if it is a person, isn't in any of the ship's records. Marcus sat down heavily. What do we do with this? We verify everything we can, document our process completely, and then I think we need to go public. This could be the most significant photographic discovery related to the Titanic since the wreck was found. If you're enjoying this story so far, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps tremendously. And drop a comment about what you think this face might be. What neither of them knew at that moment was that going public with the photograph would open doors that perhaps should have remained closed, because Thomas Whitley's photograph wasn't the only evidence that something inexplicable had been present on the Titanic's maiden voyage. It was simply the first piece of evidence that modern technology had made visible. The photograph went viral within 48 hours of its release. Dr. Chen presented her findings at a press conference on December 5, 2024, expecting moderate interest from maritime history enthusiasts and perhaps a few news outlets. Instead, the image spread across social media platforms with unprecedented speed. Within a day, it had been viewed over 50 million times. News networks from CNN to BBC dedicated segments to it. Podcasts dissected every pixel. Online forums exploded with theories ranging from rational to absurd. The rational explanations came first. It was a trick of light and shadow, a double exposure, a flaw in the restoration algorithm, deliberate manipulation. Skeptics pointed out that AI-enhanced restoration was inherently unreliable, that the machine learning systems could hallucinate details that weren't actually present in the original image. Dr. Chen welcomed the skepticism. She released her complete methodology, raw data files, and invited independent verification. Over the next 3 weeks, 7 different institutions attempted their own restorations of the original film using various techniques. All 7 produced remarkably similar images. All 7 showed the face in the shadows. The Titanic Historical Society issued a statement calling for a comprehensive investigation. They assembled a team of experts, maritime historians, photographic analysts, structural engineers familiar with the ship's design, and forensic specialists. The team was led by Dr. James Patterson, a renowned Titanic researcher who had spent 40 years studying every aspect of the disaster. Dr. Patterson's first action was to visit Dr. Chen's laboratory in person. He spent 3 days reviewing every stage of the restoration process, examining the original film under microscopes, and interviewing everyone involved in the project. "I came here expecting to find either a mistake or a hoax," he told Dr. Chen on his final day. "I found neither. This photograph is genuine, taken aboard the Titanic on April 10th, 1912. And there is indeed something in that shadow that resembles a human face. Whether it is a human face and how it got there, I cannot explain." The next phase of investigation focused on the physical possibility of a person being in that location. Dr. Patterson's team included Rebecca Tran, a structural engineer who had created detailed 3D models of the Titanic based on the original Harland and Wolff blueprints. She analyzed the exact location where the face appeared. "This area is beneath Lifeboat 10 on the port side," Rebecca explained during a video conference with the investigation team. "The space between the deck and the lifeboat housing is approximately 7 to 8 inches at its widest point. It's designed as a drainage channel, nothing more. A child couldn't fit in there, let alone an adult. And even if someone could somehow squeeze into that space, they would have been immediately visible to the dozens of passengers and crew members who were on deck at that time." She pulled up a cross-sectional diagram. "There's another problem. This area has no access point. You can't reach it from above, below, or either side without removing the lifeboat or dismantling part of the deck. It's completely sealed off during normal operations." "Could someone have been working on the David system?" asked Martin Flores, a maritime historian on the team. "I checked the maintenance logs," Rebecca replied. "No work was scheduled in that area on April 10th. The lifeboats had been inspected and secured the previous day. There's no legitimate reason anyone would be in that location, and no physical way they could be there without being seen." While the engineering analysis continued, another team member made a discovery that shifted the investigation in a new direction. Dr. Eleanor Marsh, an archivist who specialized in Titanic-related documents, had been reviewing survivor testimonies stored in various archives. She found something disturbing. "I've identified 7 separate survivor accounts that mention seeing someone or something near the lifeboats that they couldn't explain," she reported during the team's weekly meeting. These accounts were given in the days and weeks immediately following the disaster, before survivors had time to coordinate their stories or be influenced by media coverage. She shared the first account from a third-class passenger named Margaret O'Brien, interviewed by a reporter from the New York Times on April 19, 1912. "Before we left port, I saw someone standing near the boats. Not standing really, more like pressed into the darkness there. I only saw them for a moment, and when I looked again, they were gone. I thought I'd imagined it, what with all the excitement of boarding." The second account came from a steward named William Fletcher, interviewed by the British Board of Trade Inquiry on May 3, 1912. "I was doing my rounds on the morning of departure, checking that all equipment was properly secured. I had this feeling, you know the kind I mean, that someone was watching me. I looked toward the boats and thought I saw a face, but there was no one there when I went to investigate, put it down to nerves." Dr. Marsh had found 5 more similar accounts, all describing brief glimpses of a figure or face near the lifeboats during the boarding period. None of the witnesses knew each other. Their testimonies had been scattered across different archives and had never been connected until now. What's most significant, Dr. Marsh continued, is that several of these witnesses specified the location near Lifeboat 10 on the port side, the same location where the face appears in Thomas Whitley's photograph. The room fell silent as the implications settled over everyone. Dr. Patterson finally spoke. I think we need to expand our investigation. We've been treating this as an isolated anomaly in a single photograph. But if multiple witnesses reported seeing something similar, we may be looking at something more complex. Or more disturbing, added Marcus Webb, who had joined the investigation team as a technical consultant. Over the following weeks, the investigation deepened. Dr. Marsh uncovered additional testimonies that had been dismissed at the time as trauma-induced hallucinations. A second-class passenger named Henry Roberts had told investigators he'd seen a pale figure that seemed to be watching the passengers, always at a distance, never quite clearly visible. A crew member described shadows that moved wrong, following people instead of being cast by them. Most remarkably, Dr. Marsh found a diary entry from a first-class passenger named Victoria Ashford, written on April 14, 1912, the day of the sinking, just hours before the collision with the iceberg. The entry had been preserved because Victoria had given her diary to a crew member to mail from the next port of call, which obviously never happened. The crew member survived and kept the diary, which eventually ended up in a museum collection. Victoria's entry read, "There is something terribly wrong with this ship. I know how that sounds. Superstitious nonsense from a hysterical woman. But I've seen it 3 times now. This figure that appears where no one should be. Always watching, always waiting. The crew says I'm imagining things, that it's just shadows and light playing tricks. But I know what I saw. It's the same face each time, pale, intent, and somehow knowing, like it understands something we don't. I tried to photograph it yesterday, but it vanished before I could ready my camera. I have this dreadful feeling that it's waiting for something, or waiting for someone. If this story is capturing your attention, leave a like and subscribe. Your support means everything. Victoria Ashford died in the sinking. She was last seen helping children into lifeboats before the water swept her away. The investigation team now faced an unsettling question. Was the face in Thomas Whitley's photograph connected to these witness accounts? And if so, what were they actually dealing with? Dr. Patterson called a private meeting with his core team members. "We need to make a decision about how to proceed," he said. "We have a genuine photograph showing something that shouldn't exist in a location where nothing should exist. We have multiple independent witness testimonies describing something similar. And we have no rational explanation that accounts for all the evidence." "What are you suggesting?" asked Rebecca Tran. "I'm suggesting that we stop trying to explain this away and start seriously investigating what it might actually be, even if that takes us into uncomfortable territory." "You mean acknowledging the possibility of something paranormal?" Marcus said the word carefully, as if testing its weight. "I mean acknowledging that we don't understand what we're looking at and being open to all possibilities, however unlikely they might seem," Dr. Patterson replied. The team agreed to continue, but they also agreed to keep certain aspects of their investigation private until they had more concrete answers. They didn't want to fuel speculation or sensationalism, but some things, once set in motion, cannot be contained. 2 months into the investigation, Dr. Eleanor Marsh made a discovery that changed everything. She had expanded her search beyond Titanic-related documents to examine records from other ships built during the same era. What she found was a pattern that no one had noticed before, because no one had been looking for it. "I've identified 18 ships built between 1907 and 1914 that experienced catastrophic failures, resulting in significant loss of life," she reported during an emergency team meeting on February 15, 2025. That's not unusual for the period. Maritime disasters were common. But what is unusual is this. She displayed a series of photographs on the conference room screen. They were all from different ships: the Lusitania, the Empress of Ireland, the Eastland, the Volturno, and others. The photographs showed decks, passengers, crew members, and in every single image, if you looked carefully at the shadows and corners, there were faces. Not always in the same location, not always as clear as the face in Thomas Whitley's photograph, but they were there, pale, watching, present in places where no one should be. These photographs were taken by different people, on different ships, in different years, Dr. Marsh continued. I found them in archives across 3 continents. None of the photographers knew each other, but they all captured something similar. She pulled up a photograph from the Lusitania, taken on May 1st, 1915, 6 days before a German U-boat torpedoed the ship, killing 1,198 people. In the shadow of a ventilation shaft, partially obscured but unmistakable once you knew to look for it, was a face nearly identical to the one in the Titanic photograph. Same expression, Marcus observed. Same wide eyes, same pale skin. It gets stranger, Dr. Marsh said. I tracked down descendants of some of these photographers and obtained their personal papers when possible. 3 of them, 3 separate people who photographed 3 different ships, wrote about seeing something unusual before their ships departed on their final voyages. They all used remarkably similar language. A watcher, a shadow that moved wrong, a pale presence that seemed to be waiting. Rebecca Tran pulled up her structural diagrams again. Were the faces in similar locations on each ship? Specific structural areas? I thought you'd ask that, Dr. Marsh replied. I worked with an AI program to map the locations. There's no consistency in terms of absolute position, but there is consistency in terms of relative position. Every single face appears in an area associated with life-saving equipment, near lifeboats, life ring storage, or emergency exits. The room absorbed this information in silence. Finally, Dr. Patterson spoke. What's your theory, Eleanor? I know you have one. Dr. Marsh hesitated. She'd built her career on rigorous academic methodology and peer-reviewed research. What she was about to say would have sounded absurd to her 6 months earlier. I think these ships were being watched, she said. I think something or someone knew these ships were going to sink, and they were present to observe it, or maybe to try to prevent it, or maybe for reasons we can't understand. That's not a theory, Rebecca said gently. That's speculation bordering on fantasy. I know, Dr. Marsh admitted, but look at the evidence. We have physical proof, photographs that have been verified as authentic. We have witness testimonies from people who had no reason to lie and no knowledge of each other's experiences. We have a pattern across multiple ships, multiple years, multiple locations. At some point, we have to acknowledge that our conventional explanations aren't adequate. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the Cambridge campus. There's another possibility we haven't discussed, he said quietly. What if it's not something supernatural? What if it's something we just don't understand yet? Some kind of phenomenon that occurs around catastrophic events, something that appears in photographic records, but that we haven't had the technology to detect until now. Like what? Rebecca asked. I don't know. Electromagnetic anomalies, quantum effects, temporal distortions. We're detecting dark matter now that's been around forever but invisible to us. Maybe this is something similar, a natural phenomenon that manifests around disasters, but that we've never had the tools to observe properly. Dr. Patterson considered this. It's a more scientifically palatable explanation, certainly, but it doesn't explain the witness testimonies. People seeing these figures with their own eyes, not through cameras. Unless the phenomenon affects human perception too, Marcus suggested. If it's some kind of energy field or radiation that gets captured on film, it might also be visible to sensitive individuals under certain conditions. The discussion continued for 3 more hours, cycling through possibilities, examining evidence, finding no definitive answers. Finally, Dr. Patterson made a decision. We need more data. Eleanor, I want you to expand your search. Every major maritime disaster between 1900 and 1920, every photograph you can find. Let's see how deep this pattern goes. Already on it, she replied. I've got 2 research assistants helping. We should have preliminary results in 2 weeks. Rebecca, I want you to create detailed structural models of all the ships where we've found these anomalous faces. Map the exact locations. See if there are any architectural similarities that might explain localized phenomena. Rebecca nodded. Marcus, work with Dr. Chen. See if there's any way to analyze the photographs for unusual electromagnetic signatures, radiation, anything that might indicate an external cause for these images. And what are you going to do? Marcus asked. Dr. Patterson pulled out a worn notebook from his briefcase. I'm going to do something I probably should have done at the beginning. I'm going to visit the Titanic wreck site. White Star Line kept meticulous records of every artifact in every stateroom. If Thomas Whitley left anything else behind, letters, journals, anything that might give us context, it could be somewhere in the debris field. The research submersibles have recovered thousands of artifacts over the years. I'm going to review every item recovered from third-class quarters. 3 days later, Dr. Patterson was in St. John's, Newfoundland, reviewing archive materials at the Marine Research Institute. He spent 12-hour days examining artifacts, studying photographs, reviewing dive logs from various expeditions to the wreck site. On his 5th day there, a curator named Alice Pemberton approached him. Dr. Patterson, I heard you've been asking about third-class passengers. There's something in our storage that might interest you. It's been here since 2003, recovered during a private expedition. We've never been able to identify who it belonged to. She led him to a climate-controlled storage room and retrieved a small metal box, heavily corroded but intact. Inside was a leather-bound journal, remarkably well preserved due to being sealed in the box. We think it might have been kept in someone's personal safe, Alice explained. The pages are damaged, but there's writing that's still legible. Dr. Patterson carefully opened the journal. The first page had a name written in careful script: Thomas Whitley, Lancashire, England, 1912. It was the photographer's journal. Dr. Patterson spent the next 6 hours reading, documenting, photographing every page. Thomas had been documenting his journey, his thoughts, his hopes for the future. The entries were ordinary, mundane, the record of a young man's adventure. Until the entry dated April 9th, 1912, the day before boarding. I had the strangest dream last night, Thomas had written. I was on the ship, but it was sinking. People were screaming. Water was everywhere. But there was someone else there too. Someone who didn't belong. A pale figure that moved through the chaos, watching everyone, studying us like specimens in a collection. In the dream, I took a photograph, trying to capture proof of what I was seeing. When I woke, I felt disturbed in a way I can't explain. Mother would say it's just nervousness about the journey, and I'm sure she's right. Still, I can't shake the feeling that it meant something. The next entry was dated April 10th, hours before boarding. The dream came again last night, exactly the same. The figure was clearer this time. I could see its face, if it was a face. Eyes too wide, expression too intent. It was standing near the lifeboats, watching, always watching. I know this sounds foolish written down, but I'm bringing my camera. If I see anything unusual, I want proof. Perhaps that will settle my mind. The final entry was written aboard the ship, dated April 10th, approximately 2 Gilles p.m. I saw it, not a dream this time. I was on deck this morning before departure taking photographs when I felt that sensation of being watched. I turned and caught just a glimpse, something pale pressed into the shadows near the lifeboats. I took a photograph before I could think better of it. I don't know if it captured anything. Part of me hopes it didn't. The rest of me needs to know I'm not losing my mind. I haven't told anyone about this. Who would believe me? I barely believe myself. There were no more entries. Thomas Whitley died 4 days later when the Titanic sank. Dr. Patterson sat back, his hands shaking slightly. Thomas hadn't just accidentally photographed something unusual. He had seen it with his own eyes and deliberately tried to document it. The photograph was proof not just of an anomaly in an image, but of something Thomas had witnessed and tried to capture. Leave a comment about what you think is happening on this ship. I'd love to hear your theories. Dr. Patterson called an emergency meeting of the full investigation team. When everyone had assembled via video conference, he shared what he'd found. He read Thomas's journal entries aloud, then displayed photographs of each page. "This changes our understanding fundamentally," he said. "We're not dealing with a photographic artifact or a trick of light. We're dealing with something that was physically present, visible to the naked eye, and witnessed by multiple people across multiple ships. Whatever this phenomenon is, it interacts with our reality in measurable ways." "So, what's our next step?" asked Marcus. Dr. Patterson looked at each team member in turn. "I think it's time we stopped trying to explain this and started trying to understand it. We need to approach this as if we're investigating something entirely new, something that exists outside our current framework of understanding. We need to be rigorous, evidence-based, and open-minded, and we need to accept that we might never get a complete answer. But we have to try," Dr. Marsh added. "We have to try," Dr. Patterson agreed. What none of them knew at that moment was that their investigation had already attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Others had been watching, waiting to see how much the team would uncover, and those others had been keeping secrets about the Titanic and ships like it for over a century. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. On March 3rd, 2025, Dr. Patterson received an encrypted email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read simply, "You're asking the right questions." The email contained no message, only an attachment, a scanned document dated November 18, 1912, 7 months after the Titanic sinking. It appeared to be an internal memorandum from White Star Line to the British Board of Trade, marked classified, not for public disclosure. Dr. Patterson verified the document's authenticity with handwriting experts and paper analysis. It was genuine. The memorandum detailed a disturbing pattern that had been observed but not publicly reported. 7 crew members who survived the Titanic sinking had independently reported seeing an unexplained presence aboard the ship during its voyage. The reports were similar enough to concern company officials, but different enough that they couldn't be dismissed as mass hysteria or coordinated fabrication. More disturbing was the final paragraph. Similar reports have been documented from crew members of the Olympic and Britannic. Pattern suggests potential mass psychological phenomenon affecting maritime workers. Recommends suppression of reports to avoid damage to company reputation and passenger confidence. Board of Trade has agreed to classify these testimonies as inadmissible due to emotional trauma of survivors. Dr. Patterson immediately called Dr. Marsh. "They knew," he said without preamble. White Star Line knew that multiple people were seeing something. They documented it, then buried it. "Does the memorandum say what the crew members reported?" Dr. Marsh asked. "Not in detail, but it references attached witness statements. The attachments weren't included in what was sent to me." "Who sent you this?" "I don't know. The email was routed through multiple anonymous servers. Someone wanted us to know this existed, but they didn't want to be identified." Over the next week, 3 more anonymous emails arrived, each containing classified documents from different sources. One was from the British Admiralty, dated 1915, discussing anomalous observations reported by naval personnel on various vessels. Another was from an insurance company investigating maritime disasters, noting statistical improbability of concentration of similar reports across unrelated events. The third email contained something that made Dr. Patterson's blood run cold, a photograph. It showed the deck of a ship, taken in 1918. The ship was the RMS Carpathia, the vessel that had rescued Titanic survivors. In the shadow of a ventilation shaft, clearly visible now that you knew to look for it, was the same pale face that appeared in Thomas Whitley's photograph. The Carpathia sank in 1918, torpedoed by a German U-boat with significant loss of life. Whatever this is, it doesn't just appear on doomed ships, Marcus observed when Dr. Patterson shared the image. It appeared on the Carpathia, which survived the Titanic rescue. The ship didn't sink for 6 more years. Unless it's not marking ships that are going to sink, Rebecca suggested. Maybe it's marking ships that are going to be involved in disaster events. The Carpathia was involved in the Titanic disaster, not as the victim, but as the responder. Or maybe it marks ships whose fate is somehow significant, Dr. Marsh added. Ships that will become historically important because of tragedy. The investigation team spent 3 more months gathering data, analyzing patterns, and building a comprehensive database of every instance they could document. They found 47 photographs across 23 different ships, all showing variations of the same phenomenon. They compiled over 100 witness testimonies describing similar observations. They also discovered something else. The phenomenon wasn't limited to ships. A researcher in Munich contacted them after seeing their published findings about the Titanic photograph. He had been studying historical photographs of the Hindenburg airship and had noticed something unusual in images taken shortly before the disaster. When Dr. Marsh examined the photographs, she found the same pale face, this time visible in the shadow of the airship's passenger gondola. More cases emerged. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York, photographed the day before the devastating fire of 1911. The Iroquois Theater in Chicago, captured in an image taken weeks before the deadly fire of 1903. In each case, once you knew to look for it, the face was there, pale, watching, present in shadows where no one should be. It's not about ships, Dr. Patterson finally concluded. It's about disasters, mass casualty events. This phenomenon, whatever it is, appears in proximity to places and times where large numbers of people are going to die. A harbinger, Marcus said quietly. Or a witness, Dr. Marsh suggested. Maybe something that exists to observe these events. Record them somehow. Why? Rebecca asked. For what purpose? And what is it? No one had answers. The investigation team published their findings in a peer-reviewed journal in June 2025. The paper, titled Anomalous Photographic Phenomena Associated with Historical Disaster Events, was cautious and methodical. It presented the evidence without drawing conclusions, acknowledging that current scientific frameworks couldn't adequately explain what they had documented. The response was divided. Some researchers praised their rigorous methodology and called for expanded investigation. Others dismissed the entire thing as sophisticated pattern recognition run amok, arguing that human brains are designed to see faces in random patterns and that the team was simply seeing what they wanted to see. Dr. Patterson expected the criticism. What he didn't expect was the letter that arrived at his office on July 2nd, 2025. It was handwritten, postmarked from Southampton, England, with no return address. The letter read, Dr. Patterson, I've been following your investigation with great interest. My grandfather was a steward aboard the Titanic. He survived the sinking and lived until 1965. Before he died, he told me something he'd never told anyone else. He said he saw the Watcher multiple times during the voyage. He described it exactly as others have, pale, present in impossible places, always observing. But he told me something else too. He said that in the final moments before the ship went down, he saw the Watcher standing on the deck among the passengers and crew, not hidden in shadows this time, but fully visible. And he said others saw it too. He could tell by the way some people stopped and stared at the same empty space he was looking at. He said the Watcher didn't look sad or pleased. It looked complete, like it had been waiting for that exact moment and had finally gotten what it came for. My grandfather believed the Watcher wasn't warning people or trying to prevent disaster. He thought it was collecting something, recording something, experiencing something that it couldn't experience any other way. I'm telling you this because I think you deserve to know what someone who was there actually believed. I don't know if he was right. I don't know if any of this is real, but he believed it until the day he died. And he was the sanest, most rational man I ever knew. Whatever you're investigating, be careful. Some things that watch might not like being watched in return. A friend. Dr. Patterson shared the letter with his team during their final meeting. They had decided to pause active investigation, at least temporarily. They had documented everything they could, published their findings, and opened the door for others to continue the work. "Do you believe what the letter says?" Marcus asked. "That this thing, the Watcher, was collecting something?" "I don't know what I believe anymore," Dr. Patterson admitted. 6 months ago, I would have said this was impossible. Now I have evidence of something that exists, that appears before disasters, that multiple people have witnessed. But I don't understand what it is, why it's there, or what it wants, if it wants anything at all. Maybe that's the point, Dr. Marsh suggested. Maybe some things aren't meant to be fully understood. Maybe all we can do is document that they exist and accept that we're not equipped to comprehend them. Rebecca pulled up the original image, Thomas Whitley's photograph of the Titanic, with the pale face staring out from the shadows. "He was 23 years old," she said quietly. "He took this photograph thinking he was just documenting the start of an adventure. Instead, he captured something that would puzzle people more than a century later. I wonder if he ever realized what he'd photographed. I wonder if he saw it again before he died." According to his journal, he did see it, Dr. Patterson reminded them. He tried to photograph it because he saw it with his own eyes. Maybe in his final moments he saw it again. Maybe they all did. The investigation team disbanded shortly after that meeting. They had done what they set out to do, verify the photograph's authenticity and investigate the phenomenon it revealed. They had found more questions than answers, but that was often the nature of genuine discovery. Thomas Whitley's photograph remained on display at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, with a detailed explanation of how it was recovered and restored. Millions of people viewed it, each forming their own theories about what the face in the shadows might be. Some believed it was evidence of something supernatural, a ghost, a spirit, an entity from beyond. Others maintained it was an elaborate hoax or a collective delusion. Still others suggested explanations ranging from time travelers to interdimensional observers to psychological projection. Dr. Patterson kept investigating quietly on his own time. He couldn't let it go. In his private notes, he wrote, "We've proven that something unexplained exists. We've documented its presence across multiple disasters, multiple locations, multiple time periods. We have physical evidence. Photographs that can't be explained away. We have witness testimonies from credible sources who had no reason to lie. But we're no closer to understanding what it actually is. Maybe Eleanor is right. Maybe some phenomena exist beyond our current ability to comprehend them. Maybe this Watcher, if that's what it is, operates according to rules and purposes that are fundamentally alien to human understanding. Or maybe we're still looking at this wrong. Maybe we're asking the wrong questions. The face in Thomas Whitley's photograph stares at us across 113 years with an expression that seems to contain knowledge we don't possess. It was there, on the Titanic, on that beautiful April morning, when no one knew what was coming. It watched as the ship departed on its maiden and final voyage. And perhaps it's still watching. Perhaps it's always watching. The question is, what does it see that we cannot? If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment below. I love hearing your thoughts and theories about what the Watcher might be. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss future videos exploring mysteries like this one. There are more stories waiting to be told, more photographs hiding secrets, more questions that need asking. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep looking at the shadows. You never know what might be looking back.